You're listening to the home of cool, irreverent, and entertaining talk, right here on LA Talk Radio. You're listening to The Art of Love with your host, Lucia, right here on LA Talk Radio.
Hello and welcome to The Art of Love. It's Lucia. I'm your host and a dating and relationship expert. And I'm here to entertain, educate, and enlighten you about love, dating, and relationships. Take your live calls, answer your emails, and speak to authors like the great one I have today, who is Jillian Strauss. She wrote a book called Unhooked Generation, and she's actually a former Oprah producer, and she's going to tell us the truth about why we are still single. Jillian.
Hi.
Hi. And what is your website? I don't have your website.
Unhookedgeneration.com.
Of course. I should have known. So welcome to The Art of Love. Thank you for being on.
Thank you for having me.
And before I delve into the book, I just wanted to ask you real quick, since I have you on, what was it like to be a producer on Oprah?
It was great. It was a great experience. I learned a ton, and, Oprah's really amazing to work for.
Yeah, that's what I heard. I'm sure it was.
Yeah.
Well, good for you. So how did you come to write Unhooked Generation?
Well, I had a lot of single friends, men and women, that were all outgoing, attractive, successful, pretty together. And, they were all struggling to find somebody, for a long-term commitment. And everyone was sort of in the same boat, dating. These were all people that were dating and, had very active social lives, but could never seem to find the one. And it, occurred to me that clearly there's something going on here. There's so many people in the same boat, and so many single people, so why can't anybody find anyone?
Right. Yeah, in fact, I actually started reading your book several years ago, and then I just got too busy to finish reading it. And then once I got the radio show, I remembered the book, and I'm like, I got to have her on because I need to read that book, because I'm actually a member of the Unhooked. I've never been married. I never had children. Uh-huh. And I identified with a lot of these several evil influences that you discussed, because I really have no desire to get married at this time. So,
wow,
I know, it is very interesting. Everyone always asks me, how can you still be single? And it's like, well, look at the seven evil influences.
Exactly. Well, that's the thing. I think that, people, my friends, people of my generation, we always would get so frustrated and annoyed when our mothers and our family members would say, why aren't you with someone? And, we would sort of take it personally. And then I realized it really wasn't so personal. It was something more related to our generation.
Right. So let's talk about a few of the seven evil influences, which I'm sure people will wonder what the hell I'm talking about. The cult of I. Describe what that is.
The cult of I is this very, independent, even, ethnocentric perception of the world that we live in. I mean, we have iPods. You can go into Starbucks and have your coffee made with a million permutations the exact way that you want it, and then we expect, we can find love. But we're so used to, in our culture, having everything dedicated to us, and even with the internet, you can choose a partner on a certain website that has a certain religion, a certain job, makes a certain amount of money, and things in life don't always come that custom made. Certainly love doesn't. So I think the perception that we can have everything the way we want it and have our lives stay the same and be independent, it really is very unrealistic. Other generations knew that marriage was about compromise, and we don't have to compromise much as a generation. So that's a very tough lesson for us.
Right. In fact, there's a quote here from a book that you put in your book about Eve's seed, which this really struck me, and I was like, oh my God, it's true. And it says, free love is the supreme oxymoron. Totally free people can have sex but never love, because to have love is to give up freedom.
Yes, absolutely. Anyone who is in any kind of a long-term relationship will tell you that even if it is a wonderful relationship, it takes work and it takes compromise and it takes, sacrifice in some cases.
And you realize you can't be totally free and still have love.
Absolutely. If you want to be totally free, pick up and go whenever you want. You're not really someone who's ready to be in a relationship. And the way that our generation was raised, so independent, be anything you want, do anything you want, try a certain lifestyle. If that doesn't work, leave it, do a certain job, and if you get bored, move to another city. The impermanence, the transient nature of that doesn't really go hand in hand with long-term commitment.
No, not anymore. Let's move to the next one, which is the multiple choice culture. Now, I know if I get a menu that has a million choices on it, it's really hard to choose, and I get so frustrated. Like, I don't know what I'm going to choose to eat. So, of course, it's going to affect us if we have a multiple choice culture.
Absolutely. I mean, look at how many internet dating sites there are out there. I mean, this idea, I have heard so many people, I use this line in my book, and then I've heard so many people say it, not even having read my book, that a lot of people, a lot of men in particular, are like kids in a candy shop
right.
when they're dating on the internet.
Yeah.
There's just so many choices. There's so many different places you can find available, women and men for that matter, that why are you going to just set your sights on just one person? There was this experiment that I mentioned in my book out of Stanford. They set up in a grocery store 10 different kinds of jam, and people could sample them and decide which one they wanted to buy. And then they had another test, and there were only 3 kinds of jam. Now, where do you think that people bought more, when there were 10 or there were 3? You would think maybe 10 because, there's all these different things that appeal to different people. But in reality, when there were less choices, people bought more because they were less overwhelmed with choice.
Yeah.
And that's the way we are in our dating lives.
Yeah, and then you also said, the more choices you have, the higher the expectations, but then the fewer people are going to meet your high expectations. So actually, in the end, it happens that you really don't have more choices.
Absolutely.
Because I know that's my problem. It's like I can pretty much get anyone. I like to think anyways. And so if something is not working, it's like, well, why should I stick around here? I got, 10 more guys after me.
Exactly. I mean, there's nothing, as a generation, there's nothing that we feel the need to stick to. We've got millions of choices on our television sets. We have, millions of internet sites. Why, our parents, they had, 4 stations they could watch.
Yeah.
Why stick to something when there's just all these other options out there?
Right. Let's move on. Then we have the celebrity standard, which, living here in Los Angeles and, of course, there in New York, I think we're probably more aware of it because there's more celebrities in these 2 cities.
Absolutely. When you see the examples of marriage in the media, and all of these people, I'm sure you can name just, off the top of your head, 3 celebrities that have gotten married and divorced within the same year. And for our generation, celebrities are sort of our idols and the people that we look up to as examples. And so if you see their sort of fairy tale weddings, as the happily ever after, and they're all getting divorced, Brad Pitt and Jennifer Aniston, how can we believe in our own happily ever after, especially when we don't have lives that are as, charmed as celebrities? They have all the money in the world and freedom in the world and career choice in the world, and if they have children, they, have lots of help, unlike, the average couple, and they can't make it last.
Right. So
how can we?
Yeah. So of course we think, well, then it's not going to, if they can't do it, then nobody can.
Exactly.
So why do you think so many celebrity marriages fail? Do you think it's because of the cult of I, because it's all ego driven?
I do think it's the cult of I, and I think it's also the choice, it's the impatience. I think that our parents understood that marriage was supposed to be challenging and full of compromise and sacrifice, but there was the bonus of having a companion. And I think that having a companion these days is seriously underrated. And I think that in other generations, there were defined roles. If you were a man, you wanted to get married because you wanted someone to give you children and to keep your house. And if you were a woman, you needed a man to, help you pay your bills and sustain your life. Now, I'm happy that we're in a generation where we have much more options than that, and that I don't have to get married simply to be taken care of. However, there was more appreciation that person was bringing something that, if it was the man, he was taking care of the finances, and if it was the woman, she was taking care of the home. But now, because we can do all of these things ourselves, we don't always appreciate what the other person brings to the table, and we do think, I could just as well get divorced and make my own money.
Right. And in your studies, you said you found that guys, even the guys that had been really promiscuous, at the end of the day, you were surprised that a lot of guys actually do want relationships.
Absolutely. I was very surprised to find that women were as commitment phobic as men, and men wanted relationships just as much as women did. It didn't matter if this was a guy who had, slept with 50 women. Deep down, at a certain point in his life, he wanted a relationship.
Right, which is maybe why he slept.
We all know those guys in the office who are sending porn websites to their friends. You know what? Eventually those guys grow up and they get married.
Everyone does. Almost everyone.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do one more of the seven evil influences, and that is, this one I have to tell you I really identify with. It's the why suffer effect. Because it's like...
Exactly. That's back to, the sacrifice. It's sort of the why suffer, why bother. So times get tough. Again, our parents' generation, they lived through the Depression. They knew what struggle was. So when times got tough, they knew this is what brings you together. This is the glue, that the tough times that keep us together. And I think in our generation, we feel so entitled for things to be easy. If we're depressed one day, we pop a pill. Everything can be fixed so quickly, and there is no sense that you get through the tough times and there's a benefit to it. And so if things are tough, we want to check out. Today, we feel like the in love feeling that you often have, the romantic notions at the beginning of a relationship, are the glue that should hold you together, which is a completely unrealistic way to look at love, because those sort of feelings, the puppy love, the butterflies, any scientist can tell you that usually stops after 18 months or 2 years in a relationship. So if you're going to base your entire relationship on that, and that's the glue that holds you together, you're going to definitely come undone.
Now, I have like the 90-10 rule. I think that a relationship should be good 90% of the time and then have problems 10% of the time. What do you think about that?
Oh, I like that.
Oh, okay.
I've never heard that, but I think that's interesting. I mean, I think it's interesting, but I don't think that I think you're going to go through periods where it's 70-30, and then periods where it's 60-40.
Yikes.
I think maybe you're right on the balance. It would be great if it's,
Most
it
of the
usually balances out to 90-10. But I think that what happens is when you don't make the commitment that you're going to give it 100% and it's totally forever, it actually adds to the percentage of bad times, because you evaluate every single thing as, was this a mistake? Should I really be here? Instead, if you said, I'm here no matter what, you can start to see sort of like the silver lining in a bad day.
But, forever, because now people are living, of course, longer and longer. Forever sounds really scary.
Yes.
So,
and if you think about that,
yeah,
you will never get
married. Okay, that's why I'm
Forever is a really scary
Yeah.
time to be alone, too. Anything is forever. Somebody said to you, you're going to be at your job forever. That would be scary, too.
Yeah,
you're going to live in the house you live in right now forever. There are
wouldn't
very
want
few
that.
things in life we want to feel like we've done forever.
Right. Yeah, but even if you are alone forever, at least you know what it's like to be alone. It's better the devil you know than the devil you don't know.
Yes. And there are going to be days of marriage where you wish that you were alone, and there are
Right.
going to be days, if you were alone, that you wish you were married. So nothing is perfect
Yeah.
100% of the time.
I know, you can't have everything. Okay, let's go to outrageous expectations. So why is it an outrageous expectation to have the checklist, which I know everyone has?
Well, I think it's okay if your checklist includes the important things. What I found when I interviewed these 100 single men and women is they had all kinds of things on their checklist that really had more to do with common interest or hobbies and not common values. And at the end of the day, you may not want to spend every Saturday the same way. You may not want to do or watch the same shows on a Monday night. But if your values are in line and the big picture is in line and you want the same things, those things don't matter. It's not about meeting someone who's going to do everything you want to do 100% of the time. It's about someone who, big picture, has the same values that you have.
Yeah, I'm sure you're familiar with Marianne Williamson.
Yes.
Yeah, she actually talked about the checklist during one of her speeches that I used to go to, and she really said something very profound. She says, take that checklist and look at it and think, okay, would this person that's so wonderful, that has all these wonderful qualities, would this person date me? And of course, everyone laughs because they realize, no, he probably wouldn't date you, or she probably wouldn't date you. And she said, you now make another list and write down the qualities that this person that you're looking for would want in the person that they're looking for. And she goes, that's the list you need to concentrate on.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because if you're working on yourself, then you're not trying to fix someone else to fit into your picture.
Well, I think the other problem with the checklist is that, again, you're trying to make someone custom order to your specifications.
Yeah.
And that's not really the way that love works.
Yeah, because a lot of
There's an unquantifiable thing that makes you feel a certain way towards someone. And, the kind of thing somebody would do for you, pick you up, when it's raining and you don't want to walk home, things like those can't be quantified on a checklist.
No. And people always say that they knew when they met the person that they were going to marry. Is that true?
I mean, I don't really subscribe to that belief.
Okay. Uh-huh.
Some people talk about that, having love at first sight. But I think for our generation, that is so rare because we have so much skepticism and we're weighing all these things, our freedom and our independence versus being committed. Having so many choices, the cynicism about marriage. So I don't think that we're free enough to fall in love at first sight. I think we're too much in our heads about it.
Right. And then another outrageous expectation is the fear of settling. And you say, of course, obviously we all settle at some point when you make a choice because you accept this choice and therefore all the other choices are cut off.
Yes.
But it seems nobody wants to settle anymore.
Nobody wants to settle, but it depends on, again, that definition of settling, I think, is the wrong way of looking at it. Everybody settles if you think about the fact that you're marrying a real human being and not a fantasy, because nobody is perfect and nobody will fulfill every fantasy that you have. So in that sense, everybody is settling.
Right.
But I'm not an advocate of settling, and marrying someone that you have no physical attraction to,
right.
or, don't laugh with. I mean, I think that kind of settling is different. I think that today, my generation thinks if someone doesn't have every single thing on the checklist, they're settling.
Mm-hmm. And what you came up with the term, the Wilma Flintstone effect. What is that?
The what?
The Wilma Flintstone effect?
Oh, yeah, the Wilma Flintstone effect. You know, that is the idea that I believe it was the sort of the old-fashioned notion of settling.
Right. That guys are still looking for someone. I'm so surprised that guys find it important that they want their woman to cook them a meal.
Right. I do feel that there is a bit of traditionalism, left in us.
Yeah.
That there is some, even though you may have married the most modern woman in the world who maybe makes more money than you do, at the end of the day, I think a lot of men think it's great for their wife to cook them, a home cooked meal.
Yeah, I'm always surprised. Or they say, oh, just, make me a sandwich. I guess they kind of want to feel like you're kind of taking care of them in a way.
Exactly. And by the same token, I think that even successful women, many of them would feel more comfortable if they were with a man who could make a good living.
Mm-hmm.
Because after all, I mean, we still are, animals. I mean, that as much, has feminism has been around, it doesn't change that sort of innate quality that men and women have. It's been, men have always married for youth and beauty, and women have, married in some way to be taken care of, and it really hasn't changed that much.
Yeah, it's interesting to find that no matter how much money a woman makes, she still wants someone who makes more money than her.
Yes, absolutely.
So how does the media and the pop culture glorify the single life?
Well, I think, Sex and the City is really the best example of that. And I mean by that, the show and not the movie, because the movie definitely took some very different turns. But the show, that we watched over and over for 6 years really glorified the single life. And even, I don't know if you recall the episode where they had this friend, I think her name was Lainey, and they went to her house in the suburbs for a baby shower.
Right. I remember that
one. Everyone thought she was so boring. And then this woman, empathetic that she lived in the suburbs and was having a baby. And then this woman came to the city looking for excitement because she was so bored and unhappy in her life, and sort of had too much to drink and went a little crazy and took off her top, showing that she was trying to escape her suburban traditional life. Shows like Sex and the City and Everybody Loves Raymond show marriage to be boring. So I think that we are much more seduced by the single life and the fact that you could have a different sex partner every night and you could be out drinking every night. That is much more appealing to our generation than having somebody next to you, sleeping next to you in bed.
Right.
In a romantic sense, not a sexual sense, the same person every night.
Yeah, exactly. It sounds a little boring if you're not used to it. But I'm sure if you're used to it, it's okay. Yeah. So, I jokingly refer to text messaging as the downfall of Western civilization.
Absolutely.
I try to keep it to
especially when it comes to dating.
Yeah, in fact, I'm able to get around it because I actually have a landline, one of the few people who still have a landline, you and me and a few other people. And so when I meet someone, I give them my landline and I tell them, that's a landline, so you cannot text message me. And that cuts them off at the knees. So, how do email and texting and instant messaging impact dating these days?
Well, I mean, I was actually out with a male friend last week, and he said, I don't understand. I went out with this girl. We had a great time. We hooked up. I've been trying to get a hold of her. I haven't heard back. And I said, oh, you called her? Oh, well, I sent her a couple of text messages, and I haven't heard back. And I said, well, there's your answer. No woman wants to be text messaged.
Right.
She wants to be called. She wants to hear from you. She wants to know that you care. It's really easy to send a text message when you're sitting, in the back of a taxi and you're bored. It takes effort and care to have a phone conversation.
Right.
And he's like, oh, you really think that's why? I said, absolutely, that's why. So, I think that that's, again, part of our non-commitment culture. To make a phone call is a bigger commitment, and it means more than to just send a text message. Everyone sends text messages these days.
Yeah, and I find a lot of guys, they're saying like a general text message to a bunch of girls, but it sounds like it's going to just you, It's like, hey, how are you doing?
Oh, interesting.
Like, haven't talked to you for a while. How are you doing? 6
Haven't
girls.
even heard about that, yeah.
Oh, yeah, well, there you go. See, I'm giving you some information here today. No, because a friend of mine did it. That's how I found out. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known. So when I get one of those, to him, I'm like, oh, are you multi-texting again?
Yeah.
Are you up to your old tricks again? Okay, casual sex. We've got to talk about casual sex. Why is it such a detriment to eventually finding true love?
Well, I just think that casual sex can make you really jaded. You go through all of these people, and by the time you do have sex with someone you care about, it may not hold the same appeal. I mean, other generations, it was the warm-up to the sex that was exciting. It was the tension built from the first kiss or the first night that you held hands and you didn't have sex, and that's what made it exciting, and you wanted to build that expectation. Nowadays, we have sex on the first date, and then we decide and get to know each other and decide if you want to hang out after that. It's sort of now sex is the icebreaker, not the build-up. And we sort of cheat ourselves out of the excitement that comes, the expectation that comes with waiting a little bit.
Yeah, it's turned into a hookup culture.
Absolutely.
So speaking of hookup culture, you've got some terms here that I'm going to go through. What is a bling ultimatum?
The bling ultimatum is when a woman says to a man, you basically have to give me a ring, or
you're out of here,
or else I'm leaving. I'm sure we all know people who have done this. Sometimes it's successful, and sometimes it's not successful. But the bottom line is, who really wants to get married that way?
Right. Well, I actually tell women, I go, don't give an ultimatum, just leave. And if he wants you, he'll call back.
Right.
Okay, what is DTR talk?
DTR
Defining
talk.
the relationship.
Oh, the defining the relationship talk. Well, I joke about that because people usually think it's the woman who, has that sort of like, okay, when are we committed? Are we exclusive? But in reality, in my experience, it was usually the man in my relationships that initiated the DTR talk.
Wow. And how
so
long?
It's, defining it, that need, you're going along, you're dating, you're having a great time, but at some point, one of you is going to say, okay, where is this going?
And so you found, for you, it was generally guys. How long did it take them from when you first started?
Generally guys. I think the stereotype is the woman always wants to know where it's going. They can't just be in the moment.
Right.
But, surprisingly, I found in a lot of my relationships, it was the man that initiated that conversation.
And how long would it take them? Months? Like 3 months, 4 months, 5 months?
Yeah. Months or even weeks sometimes.
Oh, okay. Because, that's the problem. Women, they're impatient and usually on a different time schedule than the man.
Yes.
And so they're trying to rush to define
And unfortunately, that can often kill their relationship, and a relationship that otherwise might have done okay.
Yeah, because the guy's having fun. He's doing okay, and why would he want to change things?
Yeah.
But, that's what I find. It's like if I don't say anything, eventually there's like guys like, okay, where's this going? What's going on here? And then you know that you can go to the next level. Okay, what is express dating?
Oh, express dating.
Yes.
Well, it's just this idea that you can speed through dates. You can have maybe one date for dinner and then meet someone else for drinks, double booking this, going on dates with a lot of different people. It used to be you lived in a town and you would sort of know who was going out with somebody else, and it would sort of like have some embarrassment to it. You sort of really needed to be with just one person. But nowadays, with all the internet options, there's just no shame to, dating as many people as you can in as short a period of time as possible. People don't even want to commit. They have such commitment issues, they don't even want to give someone their whole night. They can't even commit their whole night to one person, let alone a lifetime. So they'll book 2 or 3 dates in one evening.
Wow. Yeah, I did a lot of internet dating. I've stopped now for a while. I got burnt out. But, I found that, I may have like 5, 6 guys I'm talking to, but then eventually I may have only ended up meeting 1 or 2. So a lot of times they would just, something would happen. It just wouldn't work out. So it's almost like I had to have 5 or 6 going in order to finally go out with 1 or 2.
Yes.
Well,
yes, but again, you're looking at dating as sort of, okay, let me weed out. Sort of an elimination process.
It is. It's like a reality show.
It is a reality. It is like a reality show. Instead of like, you're not going to fall in. People want, these days, they're so impatient. They want to meet someone and have this instantaneous, he's the one.
Yeah.
But it's really through time and experience and getting to know someone that you fall in love with someone. And we don't really give it a chance these days to happen.
Yeah, it's because the world is so fast-paced. We want everything
so fast-paced.
Quickly.
Immediately.
Right. And we're not willing to wait to see if it's going to develop into something.
Exactly.
Okay. What is marriage light?
Oh, marriage light. Marriage light is the many strategies of our generation that we engage in. We want physical intimacy. We just don't want the ties and the long-term commitment of marriage. So it's the Gen X version of commitment, intimacy without risk and without traps. So an example of that is, hedging your bets. You might move in with your boyfriend, but you keep your apartment just in case it doesn't work out. You sort of have that fallback plan. You might get engaged to somebody, but you have this you sort of know in the back of your mind, we could break up, we could call off a wedding. I know other people who've done that. So it's also having like a starter marriage, where you think to yourself, you get married and it doesn't work out and you get divorced. And that's not the way other generations thought.
No, not at all. Okay.
So you're committed, but you're not really 100% committed.
No, it's more a convenience than a commitment.
Yes.
Okay, hope this doesn't sound like a quiz. The next one is play mode.
Well, I think that our generation is all about play and is all about fun, and it is all about, entitlement. And that could mean casual sex, casual dating. And the bottom line is you're just not ready for a commitment. You could say, oh, John, he wasn't ready for a girlfriend. He was still in play mode, meaning he does whatever he wants. He has casual dating and casual sex, and he just doesn't want to be serious about anyone. And that is so acceptable. Nobody would even look at you like anything's wrong with you. They would just say, oh, he's just in play mode. He's just in that stage.
Mm-hmm.
Other generations, if somebody was 30-something years old and still going out and having one-night stands, somebody would think either that person, had some serious issues or was gay or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, people aren't growing up as fast as they used to.
Absolutely.
I mean, my mother, she had a child at 20, one at 22, and one at 24.
Wow.
So by the time she was 25, she had 3 kids.
And that's completely generational.
Yeah, these days it doesn't happen very often. And if it does, you're like, what's wrong with her?
Uh-huh.
Why did she get married and have kids so quickly?
Yeah. She must have been really, needy or lonely.
Yeah. Where before it was just expected. You had to get married and have kids.
And if you did it, you were the odd one out.
Right.
Today, if you do it young, you're the odd one out and looked at as odd.
Right. Okay, how about what is the total package?
The total package, well, I think we all are, looking for the total package.
Absolutely.
We think we really can have it all. That one person is going to be the combination of good looks, brains, personality, someone who has everything. It's the same idea of settling, that someone wants the total package. And, of course, nobody is the total package.
But they can certainly try to become the total package.
Yes.
Since they have so much time being single, working on themselves.
Yes.
Okay, so people give a lot of reasons for delaying marriage, and one of them is, okay, well, I have plenty of companionship, so why should I commit?
Absolutely. So in our parents' generation, companionship was something that was really valued. But today we have lots of friends. We even have, lots of friends of the opposite sex, and we can have sex outside of marriage, which wasn't the case in our parents' generation. So we go to all these different people to fulfill our needs. We might have the guy that we have sex with. We have the girlfriend we go shopping with. So all of our physical companionship, our sexual companionship, our emotional companionship, maybe we have our therapist for that. So we have all these different people fulfilling those needs.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't, need one person for that.
Right.
And so, we don't really value companionship. We don't, in the same way that you want that one person to provide it. Today we want, this love, this feeling of euphoria, which is really unrealistic in our partners.
I know you're married, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. And so what made you finally decide to marry this person?
Well, I really, I obviously wrote this book because I was really struggling with these evil influences. I mean, here I was, someone who came from a very happily married family. My parents were, have been married for about 50 years, and they're still quite in love. And you would think, why would this girl be so afraid of commitment?
Mm-hmm.
But it was this idea that my parents seemed to be an anomaly. And I knew so many people whose parents were divorced. I even had friends who were divorced. I was so scared of making a mistake or settling. And finally, when I looked at all the behaviors of people of my generation, and I realized after years and years of dating, nobody was right. This guy was too short. This guy was too into sports. This guy was, we weren't close enough in line in terms of what we wanted to do with our free time. So once I realized that I had all these rigid expectations, the checklist, and I started to relax those evil influences, and I thought to myself for the first time, it never occurred to me that there was something I was doing wrong in my dating life, not that I was meeting the wrong people, because I always thought, everything was wrong with everybody else, something was wrong with everybody else. And when I looked at myself after hearing all these other people talking about the same feelings as I was feeling, I realized if I don't relax these evil influences, and if I don't relax my expectations, I'm going to be alone for the rest of my life.
Mm.
And at that time, I met someone who was really a fantastic person who maybe 5 years ago I would have said he's not this or he's not that. In reality, once I did make the commitment of marriage, even though I went through in my mind, like, I'm limiting my options, and is there someone better out there? Once I made that commitment and fully made it, I was like, this is the smartest thing I ever did in my entire life. I can't believe I doubted this. This person is so much more wonderful than I even thought. But it was in my mindset of he's not this, he's not that, he was supposed to be this, supposed to be that, that I didn't even see how great he really was.
Right, because you're so busy rejecting him, you couldn't see
exactly
the good things about it.
And I was so busy not fully committing. Even if I wasn't rejecting him, I wasn't fully committed. In the back of my mind was, well, I guess if it doesn't work out, we could always get divorced. Or if it doesn't work out, even though I knew I really didn't believe in that, I really didn't want that. If it doesn't work out, we could always call it off.
So once you fully made that commitment, how do things change?
It was great. I just fell so much more in love with him than I had allowed myself to be before that.
Oh, because, I've heard guys that eventually were reluctant to get married. They married in their late 30s, and the one thing they all said was, I wish I'd done this sooner.
Yes, yes. And of course, now they're older, and a lot of them may want children, and it's not as easy to have children in your late 30s and 40s, not just physically, but just to care for them.
Right. Okay, so let's go on to the good news then. How do we find love in this generation?
So I think what we do, it starts with self-examination. I mean, if you're of a certain age and you truly want to be with someone down to your core, it's not this, your mother thinks you should be with someone, or, you only want to be with someone because your biological clock is ticking, or you only want to be with someone because, none of your friends are single anymore. If you truly want to be with somebody and you're not, then there's probably something that you're doing wrong in dating.
You're the common denominator.
You're the common denominator.
You
probably have either unrealistic expectations or a very extreme checklist, or you're very cynical about love because you grew up in this sort of post-divorce generation, or you're very influenced by the fact that you're in a post-feminist generation. You think to yourself, I don't need him. I'm only going to get married if I'm really in love because I don't need to have a man in my life. You might not need to, but maybe you really want to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you don't
so
need
I think that once you open your mind and you allow yourself to get to know someone, and I don't mean throw out the values you really want in a person just to get married. I'm very against that. But when you open your mind and your heart to getting to know somebody,
mm-hmm.
you really increase your chances of falling in love when you relax those expectations, you relax your checklist. And it's just like if you went on a date, if you met someone who was a friend, a guy that was a friend, if you were set up on a date with that same guy, you might not like him on a date, but as a friend, you might really fall in love with him. I have so many stories of people who married their best friend, because if you put on those glasses like I'm looking for the one,
right.
Nobody's going to seem just right. But if you have no expectation and someone's just your friend, you might grow very close and very intimate.
Uh-huh. Okay, so let's briefly go over the 5 keys, because you said from happily mated people you learned the second stage of finding true love. So the first one is, as we mentioned, look at yourself first.
Look at yourself first, absolutely.
Because it's probably you, not him or her.
Yes.
Again, burn the checklist.
Burn the checklist, absolutely.
And, okay, stop speeding. What does that mean?
Stop speeding means having this impatience that is such a part of our culture that, when the show gets boring, you change the channel, you go to a different website, the line's too long at Starbucks, you go somewhere else, you try to have 2 dates in the same evening. So love, it takes time. It really, most people who have been long married say they're, much more in love 10 years down the line than they were, at their first puppy love. So,
but how does
love
that
takes
happen?
Time to bloom.
Oh, okay. Because I hear people saying that. I'm like, what? How can you be more in love 10 years later?
Absolutely, because your connections are deeper. You've been through more together. You know each other better.
Oh, okay. All right.
Maybe the first few months I was dating my husband, when I would see him and he, the way he looked was still a novelty to me. I might have that sort of, excitement, that sort of puppy love feeling, even though I didn't know him that well. But now when I'm feeling sick and he brings me, my favorite kind of coffee in bed, I love him that much more because he knows me and he knows what's going to make me happy, and he cares about that. So I think that you need to value those things, the connections and the knowing each other, as much as the sort of like the first throes of passion.
Right. Okay. The 4th key is go all the way. Now, what does that mean?
Go all the way means when you're going to be with someone, fully commit to it. I have a male friend who started dating somebody, and then at the same time he started dating a second woman. And he would say to me, I really like this girl, but, now there's this other girl, and I'm not really sure about the first girl now. And I said, you never fully gave the first girl a chance. You never fully invested in that because you had this other woman. I said, if you shut down your other options and you fully invest, in this first woman, you really get to know her, you'll have a much better chance of falling in love with her.
Uh-huh. Yeah, but that seems difficult today because everyone is into multiple dating.
Everyone is. But, there's nothing wrong with, I just said to him, try out dating the first woman. Give her a real chance. Fully commit. Go all the way. Don't hold back emotionally. And you know what? If that doesn't work out, yes, you do move on to the next person. But when you have another person waiting for you, you're hedging your bets. You just don't, it's like going for a job interview, and there's this other interview coming. Maybe you don't completely put it out there that you've got to have this job because you think, well, I don't want to put all my eggs in that one basket. But if you don't put all your eggs in that one basket, you can never get to the level, of deep love and commitment that you may be seeking.
Wow. Okay. And the fifth one, commit and fuel the fire.
Yes, commit and fuel the fire. So many people complain of our generation that, once the fire goes out, once the passion goes out, there's nothing left anymore, and that's when a lot of people get divorced. But if you commit yourself to the relationship and to fueling the fire isn't something that just burns on its own. You have to make a commitment to renew it over and over again, especially if you're in a 10, 20, 30, 40, 50-year relationship. You're going to have that happy relationship. People think that the initial spark of the union is supposed to take you through the rest of your life and that it should have no effort, and that if it needs a little bit of tending to, that something is wrong in the relationship. That mentality is wrong. Of course, you have to tend to a fire. Of course, you've got to keep that spark going. So it's once you commit, when you fully commit, you're also committing to fuel that fire.
Right. Yeah.
Don't put it on autopilot.
Yeah. You brought up divorce, and with the divorce rate being so high, people are obviously they're afraid to get married. Why do you think that the divorce rate is so high? Do you think maybe it's because people aren't fully committing?
I think the divorce rate is so high, yes, because people aren't fully committing, and because when it does get tough, they check out and they think it's so easy to get, divorced and start over and find someone else, and because when the passion seems to be gone, they don't take the time to fuel it. All of these reasons. And because divorce is so acceptable today. I interviewed someone for my book who said she married her best friend, she had a child with that person, and she got divorced because she said, I just thought we were best friends. We weren't really, that wasn't really enough. And, these days there's no stigma attached to divorce, so why should I stay married? You shouldn't stay married because there's no stigma. You shouldn't get divorced because there's no stigma. You did make a commitment after all, and just because there's no stigma, that doesn't mean that a child doesn't need its father in its life every day. I mean, the fact that she had a child and she so cavalierly said, there's no stigma to being divorced. My kid won't suffer from any stigma. Well, he might not suffer from a stigma, but he might not be very happy that he only gets to see his dad every other weekend.
Right. And unfortunately, that's the norm. So
that's the norm.
Yeah, I have one
final... That doesn't mean it's good. It just means that it's acceptable.
Exactly. So what would you say to someone who wants to find true love, but they're afraid because of all the pain from past relationships?
I would say, unfortunately, you've got to take a risk. Nothing in life is 100% guaranteed.
Okay. And then also I hear that, once you do find the true love and you open yourself up to it, it actually heals you of pain of past relationships.
It can, and I also think that it has to do with you. I mean, when you are ready to love and be loved, you will find it. And you can't if you're constantly resisting it and you're constantly not finding it, it really has, again, more to do with you than the other person.
Right, I agree. Well, thank you so much for writing this book,
You're
because I think
welcome.
it really speaks to this generation, and I think you've hit it on the head totally with the 7 evils and everything you've written.
Thank you.
Thank you, of course, for being on, and take care.
My pleasure.
Okay, bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, that was Jillian Strauss, the author of Unhooked Generation, and the website is, of course, unhookedgeneration.com. As usual, it is time for me to move on down the road. Thank you for joining me today. My website, theartoflove.net. My book, lessonsoflove.net. And remember, love inspires, empowers, uplifts, and enlightens.
You're listening to The Art of Love with your host, Lucia, right here on LA Talk Radio.